it doesn't get at the problem, at the source of the problem. Where is this pain arising from? And it's usually a multifactorial, meaning a lot of factors are kind of meeting in this one place, and it's expressing itself as pain, as physical pain.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Soul Sessions with Creative Mind. I'm Deborah Maldonado. I'm here with Dr. Rob Maldonado, and we are continuing our series. This is the last episode in the series on mind-body health, mind-body wellness. And we are so excited to introduce our last topic. But before we do, I want to remind you, please, if you want to not miss an episode, click on the button below if you're watching our YouTube channel, or if you are listening on Spotify or iTunes, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss another episode. Yeah. And so what's today's topic, Rob?
Yeah, let's dive in. It's an important one. We're talking about how to transform pain. And specifically, we want to talk about chronic pain.
And physical pain, not... because there's emotional pain too, but we're focusing on the body.
Yeah. And pain, it's so universal. I mean, it's almost like when you think about human suffering, you think about pain, right? Physical pain, as well as emotional pain. And we'll talk about how they're connected, because that's really what we're talking about in the mind-body, that the mind and the body are one.
And of course, continuing what we talked about last episode is that our approach is an East-West approach. So we have the Eastern philosophy that tells us there's this material world that is the physical body, the mind, the what we're conscious of. And then there's something more to us that's unconscious, the consciousness that holds us together. That creates this experience of life, and that spiritual element, which I think is so important. If you're talking about mind-body, you have to transcend the mind-body in something beyond it in order to really work with it in an effective way.
Absolutely.
So what is pain, Rob? How would you describe pain, physical pain? Like, why do we have it?
Yes, so the body has this incredible mechanism to make sure we don't damage our tissue, our skin, our bones, or blood vessels. And so it's an alarm system, essentially, whenever there's a danger of us hurting ourselves. Our hand is too close to the fire, it's going to get burned. It would destroy the skin and the cells on the skin. The pain sensors, receptors shoot a message to the brain and say, pull back your arm. And
don't hold on to that fiery rock.
Yes. And a lot of it, of course, works unconsciously, automatically. We don't have to think about it.
It's almost instinctual. We have, even as babies, no one has to tell us that fire is bad. We could feel it. It's something that we automatically feel.
Or we learn the hard way.
we don't, visually we don't, but until we have an experience of it, we start pulling away.
Yes.
And so it's a good mechanism to have. We don't want to numb that pain receptor.
That's right. There are children that are born without pain sensitivity, and they get into trouble really quick because they start to hurt their eyes, hurt themselves, because there's no pain telling them, don't do that. Don't rub your eyes really hard to where you damage your eyeballs, because they can't feel it. They just, they're just feel an itch and they scratch it, but it's not healthy. Pretty soon, the children have to be restrained somehow, or some kind of apparatus has to prevent them from touching their face in a harmful way.
Oh, wow. So we should feel that if we do have pain, it's there for a reason, but we also need to understand what it's like to have regular pain, which is a headache, or you break your arm, you have a temporary pain until they set it. You lift something, you have a little backache, but you're okay. You work out a little too hard, and your muscles ache. You have to eat something wrong, and your stomach aches. So those are some signals. Maybe you stressed your body out too much, and those are all great indicators of be careful, slow down, don't do that, adjust. But then there's this concept which is turning into an epidemic, and a really big issue in the world is chronic pain. 1.6 billion people on the planet experience chronic pain, and chronic pain is pain that lasts more than 3 months. It's over a long period of time where it's not just a couple days or a week, it's ongoing.
Yeah, that's incredible. An incredible amount of human suffering from injuries, from work-related stress, from activities, sports, sports injuries, on
Even
and on.
autoimmune disorders, they have chronic pain, and the doctors a lot of times don't know exactly how to treat it.
That too, yeah, a lot of autoimmune disorders, car accidents, motorcycle accidents, on and on.
You see even sports people, you see these retired sports people having to deal with their lifelong punishment of their bodies, extreme intensity of an activity. So yeah, it's a big problem, but also exacerbating that is all these other chronic pain situations where it's not about an event. It's just what is happening, what is maybe high stress environment, a long-term illness that doesn't go away, and you're dealing with it. So there's biological factors, there's psychological factors, there's social factors, and there's spiritual factors to pain.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with the biological ones. Of course, we spoke about how the body has this sensory system that includes pain sensors to give us a heads up as to when we're about to damage our body tissue. They're not evenly distributed. That's an interesting part of it, that different parts of the body have more pain receptors than others.
So I noticed that when I get my eyebrows done, it hurts really bad. Or they say around your lips is really sensitive.
Sure.
And then your fingertips. But other areas of your body aren't as sensitive. Maybe is there more fat, or is that the case, or just certain areas that need to be more sensitive?
Well, it's different than the touch sensory system. So touching, for example, it's not pain. It's not painful to us, right? It just feels like a little pressure. But pain's receptors are distributed in a different way. So the back is very sensitive, right? That's why if somebody touches your back, it's like, or any injury to the back kind of persists for a long time.
What about tickling? We get sensitive to tickling. Is that because our gut is very sensitive?
No, those are sense receptors, not so much
pain receptor.
Pain.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, the pain receptors are different. They're specialized nerve endings that are specialized for pain.
So where's the greatest concentration of that in your body, you think? Is it the back?
The back, yeah, and the arms, those kind of areas, and also parts of the faces. But the nose is kind of low on the scale. It doesn't have that many pain receptors. The thumb, they say, is probably one of the least.
Wow.
ones. So, you kind of sense that it's kind of numb, right? You can put pressure on it. It doesn't really hurt that much. So I guess because we use our hands a lot. So
we don't want to be like, I can't do anything.
Right.
So, yeah, and so the biological factor is the receptors in the body, and then it feeds back to the brain, and then the brain interprets that sensation and decides how you should react to it.
Yes, that's one of the incredible things about the body, that it's the pain, although it appears to us that we're feeling it in the area where we feel the injury or the burn, it's really happening in the brain. The signals have to reach the brain, and then the brain interprets that as the experience that we know as pain. It kind of feels hurtful to us.
Yeah.
Painful, burning, sharp, dull, aching, all those.
The discomfort.
That subjective
level, right?
experience.
Yeah. And it's different for everyone. That pain is not really that receptor. And us, some people have a high tolerance and some people have a low tolerance. I think you can also learn to not feel, desensitize yourself or hypersensitize yourself. And that's really like when we go into the psychological part of it. What I see a lot is the pain is not actually the cause. There's a deeper cause. And a lot of times the pain is the effect of something psychological, an emotional event, and then it shows up in the physical body as pain.
Yeah, so we know it's an interpretation, right? The brain, mind interprets that experience or those impulses coming from the body as pain, and then tries to determine, what is the level of pain that I'm experiencing? Is it intolerable? Is it tolerable? Is it mild? What is the quality of it? Is it a sharp pain? Is it a dull pain? Is it persistent or chronic? Or just acute, meaning it's going to disappear as soon as I move my hand away from the pain stimuli? But psychological factors have to do with that interpretation and the emotion and the cognition around it. We know if we're depressed, we tend to experience higher levels of pain than when we're not.
It's almost like this story we're telling ourselves about it, and the idea that it's not going to get better, that it's getting worse.
One of the factors we know in depression is that people feel they're being punished. So they feel like, here it is, right? I'm being punished for something, some guilt they have in their past. And
it's like a worthiness even that, spiritually the God or the spirit has abandoned you and you're left here. You're some karma that you're trying to pay off from this, and that kind of beating yourself up for it, and that makes it even worse. Or even anger at your body. We found too that when I worked with people on pain, the more angry they were about their physical condition, it actually, they made them hate their body, and then the body creates more of a body you hate and creates more pain. So it's that feedback between the mind and the body that's constantly communicating on even a psychological level, not just that mechanical, biological level from brain to body, but the mind itself.
Yes, and then there are feedback loops. For example, if I experience pain, especially chronic pain, and I'm thinking God is punishing me, or life of the universe is punishing me for something I did, that creates a feedback loop, like a circuit that keeps running automatically, so that I find it hard to break that cycle.
Well, even this idea that, like you said, that feedback loop of I don't deserve it, or I'm bad because I have this, but that feeling of defeat, because a lot of times people have chronic pain and they've tried so many things to deal with it, and then they get defeated, and then they start to believe they'll never be out of pain, and that also creates that never being out of pain, and they're kind of stuck in that loop.
Yeah, and these are just small samples or examples.
Not the whole gamut of...
Yeah, because it's a long list of emotions that play into this biopsychosocial model of pain. The social part, of course, is, do we get secondary gains from being sick or being in pain.
Mm-hmm.
And often, especially as children, we might get rewarded for when we're sick or when we're in pain.
Yeah, when you get home from school and you get to stay home from school, mom nurtures you. She brings you a little soup, and you know. But then after school, everyone's out playing, and you can't play because you're sick. You took off from school. But or even you skin your knee, and mommy kisses your knee and makes it better, or gives you a little treat. And so we learn that when we're in pain, we get a treat. And especially elderly people, sometimes that's the only time they get attention from their family is when they have a medical issue. And so everyone is around them and they can rally around them. And then when they're feeling better, it seems they're not getting the attention. And so there's a lot of research around that kind of creating the symptoms so they can get attention. Like you said, there's a secondary gain that if I let go of this, even chronic pain, people can get used to not working. So socially, economically, a lot of people who have chronic pain are on disability and they can't work. But you're so used to getting that disability check that unconsciously you may think, well, if I get out of pain, now I'm going to have to go and get money for myself. There could be, and again, this is not conscious, but there could be a secondary gain from that as well. Like your body and mind gets into a pattern, and it's almost like this is better. The familiar is always better than something new. Almost like that fear, it could get worse. So let me just kind of manage my symptoms the way it is. And also socially, people with chronic pain have relationship issues a lot of times. The feeling of not fitting in with society if they can't work, feeling that they're not contributing or they can't do social activities like everyone else, and it can be very isolating.
Absolutely. And then spiritual elements of it, again, the sense of being punished by a supreme power, God or the universe or life in general. However you see life. But we also know faith, spirituality, spiritual practices have a protective effect on chronic pain, meaning it protects the individual from those experiences. And then when it does happen, it helps them overcome the chronic pain.
So it could be a source. Go to the biology can work against you or for you. The psychology can work for you or against you. Social issues can work for you or against you. And then the spirituality can work for you and against you. It's based on how you explain it.
And then you asked earlier about genetics.
Yeah.
Everything has a genetic component because the body is a genetic expression, essentially. Everything has some genetic component to it. In research, the variance is considered high or low. Like some have a higher genetic component than others. And sometimes it's broken down into percentages, things like that. But in general, everything has to have a a genetic predisposition for how you're going to react to it.
So as long as you have a body, there's biological elements.
Yeah.
And then we also learn from our family how other people dealt with illness, and culturally there's certain, you can't be ill, or it's like part of the culture to suffer from maybe a family thing that happens to everyone in the family, conditions that happen. I know a lot of people have Crohn's and those IBS, and a lot of times it's in a family line, and you feel, well, this is part of our lot, and almost like we feel, especially when it's chronic, we feel powerless. The impact mentally on a person who suffers from chronic pain, it's not only the pain itself and the discomfort, but the mental anguish of having to deal with it, and can be depressive, and some people even suicidal from it. They can't live with the pain, and so we need other ways to work. And everyone knows about the opioid crisis, that pain pill, like take a pill, but it's addictive, and so again, it's not the safest route, just taking a pill. We have to look at the whole person.
Yeah, again, we mentioned in our previous podcast how modern medicine is very good at treating infectious diseases and emergency traumatic situations, but it's not very good at treating these lifestyle problems. And chronic pain is certainly one of the lifestyle problems, right? That it's about the patterns of your life, how you've been living your life. And to make those changes requires some effort. It's not going to be a one pill solution.
Just to cover, what it does is just diminish the perception of pain, but it doesn't really heal the body.
It doesn't get at the problem, at the source of the problem. Where is this pain arising from? And it's usually a multifactorial, meaning a lot of factors are kind of meeting in this one place, and it's expressing itself as pain, as physical pain.
But there is a way out of pain. And one of the things I discovered in my early training of pain management is that pain is an interpretation of the mind.
Absolutely. And that's what saves us. A lot of the times that it is a subjective interpretation that we're making about an experience. Of course, we know it's real. We're not saying, it's all in your mind. Everything is in the mind, essentially. Everything we experience is a mental experience, but it's very painful, meaning it's hurting us. It's causing us anguish, distress, and it's demoralizing us. When we experience chronic pain, it starts to wear us down to where we start to feel hopeless, helpless, that
we don't feel like we're in control of our bodies anymore.
Yes.
And then if the doctor doesn't have the answer, it's really defeating. This expert of the body is not able to treat us in a very maybe like numbing the pain or coping with the pain, but it's almost like you have to, a lot of times, it's something you're going to have to live with. And I think that there is another way. There's a way out. And even in the hospital, when we talk about perception of pain, the reason why, or go to the doctor, they always ask you from a scale of 1 to 10 how painful that is, because there's no way they can measure it. There's no, they can look at your body and assume, well, this looks like an intense situation. It probably feels this way. But each person will label that the same biological response in it, like a 9 or a 5 or a 4, right?
That's right. So here's the definition of guided imagery, which is one of the approaches that we recommend for chronic pain. Guided imagery is the treatment of chronic pain, and it aims to enhance relaxation as well as unhooking attention from the pain and the mental elaboration about it through the use of peaceful, soothing, and symbolically therapeutic mental images. So this part is interesting. First of all, relaxation. We know the relaxation response has an incredible beneficial effect on the mind-body, including somebody in chronic pain. It's going to help them feel better. It's going to release a lot of endorphins, a lot of feel-good stuff in the body, and they're going to feel better.
It activates the healing response in the body.
Yes. The other one, unhooking the attention from the pain. And here's the important word, right? That we're hooked into that pain.
We're focused on it when we have it.
The mind naturally goes there. It's like when you have a toothache, you can't stop thinking about it.
Or you have your tongue there, touching it all the time because you're like so focused. And it's really designed that way. Right? The mind, the brain is saying there's pay attention to this. But as we pay attention, it's like the blood flows there, and then it gets more intense. And my clients that I worked with on migraines, I would always tell them, like, when you have a migraine, you're kind of this big heavy block on your head that you're focused on the head. So find a part of your body that feels calm. And most of the time I tell them, focus on your feet. Imagine your feet in warm water. And that warm water, the blood will naturally flow to the feet. Even if you're not in warm water, you can imagine it. And it starts to pull the pressure away from the head. and move it to the feet, and it relieves the pain. There's, of course, many other imagery scripts I have for that, but that is just an example of how powerful it can be to be able to direct your mind. And I think the important thing about this, Rob, is that when people have chronic pain or even any kind of pain, they feel powerless. They feel that they're reacting to their body, and then they go to a doctor or take aspirin or pain medication to deal with it, but they feel like they're a prisoner in their body. And guided imagery and these other interventions help you get back the power.
Absolutely. And then the third one that they mentioned, this is symbolically therapeutic mental images. Now here we can make a connection to the spirituality that we're talking about, because these mental images, almost as like Jung talks about these numinous images that appear through dreams and visions. When a person is able to observe them through guided imagery, either somebody else guiding them or themselves practicing a guided meditation, and they were able to hold their mind on these important numinous images within the mind, they have a powerful transformative effect that plays into the healing system within the body.
The power of faith. When my dad was going through chemo, I told him to imagine the white light. He's Catholic, so I told him, imagine Jesus is here with you, and he's putting his beautiful white light, golden light, healing light in you, his healing powers to go through your body and dissolving it of all the cancer. And he used the visualization, and you use what that spiritual power, I really do believe, has such an impact that we don't. Modern medicine doesn't talk about it enough, but it's that the belief and faith in something bigger than you is really just mind-blowing how it can impact a person's state of mind. And then there's kind of comfort in knowing they're not alone, and that feeling of connectedness to something greater, that spiritual nature.
The other one that I wanted to mention is biofeedback. Because here we see the power of the understanding the connection between the mind and the body, meaning that your thoughts, and not only the conscious thoughts, but your mind's ability to observe and the reaction in the body is one. It's connected. Whereas we think our mind and our thoughts are separate than our body, they're not. And biofeedback, and it's been around for a long time, since the 70s, and it's still around and still being researched and developed. But essentially what it is that we use technology, an external apparatus of some kind, to give us feedback on our bodily function.
So you have all the screens, and then you watch it?
Yeah, so here's a simplified example, right? Let's say I want to reduce the blood flow, because blood flow we know is connected to inflammation, for example. Let's say I injure my thumb and it's swollen. You know how it swells up, right, when you're spraying part of your body. So that means there's more blood flow going to that area and causing the inflammation. And let's say I want to reduce that inflammation. So I might wrap a little sensor around it that measures the blood flow, how much blood that area of my body is receiving. And then there's a little screen that shows me the numbers associated with blood flow. Let's say from 1 to 10.
Okay.
So I wrap it around my thumb and I observe the needle, and it says 10, meaning there's a lot of blood flow going to that area, right? And rightly so. The body's trying to heal itself. But let's say I want to reduce it, because I know if I can reduce the blood flow, it will reduce the swelling and it will reduce the pain sensation that I'm feeling. So now all I have to do through biofeedback is observe the needle, and I don't even have to understand how I'm doing it or how my body's doing it. But as soon as I start to see the needle go down a little bit, my mind body is learning whatever it did, whatever it tried, it saw that there was a correlation, that the needle went down. So consciously, I'm not even aware of what I did in my body or what my mind body did.
Your breathing could have slowed, or your heartbeat could have slowed down, or
or just focusing on the on the screen.
It's just relaxing.
Yeah, it distracted me, and but whatever I did, it moved the needle in the right direction. So it keeps on doing it, and sure enough, the needle starts to go down to 5 to 2. To 1.
And did your thumb get better?
My thumb got better. Pain relieved. Inflammation went down. Now, this mechanism, of course, works in many different ways, but the basic idea, the theory is very solid, that your mind, body, just by observing what is the correlation between what the mind, body is doing and an external measure, allows your body to learn how to do it, how to reduce that pain.
It's like the observer mechanism, almost like when you observe and you become aware, that you can actually activate some kind of deeper intelligence to. But if you're just unconscious and just reacting to the pain, and you're not being consciously observing in this way, where it's like you're looking at the number and you're distracted a little bit.
Yeah, it's an incredible. Nobody really understands it completely, but the mechanism is experimentally verifiable. In other words, it works most of the time that it's applied, if it's applied in the right way.
So we have so many tools our mind can provide that can help us with this, because modern medicine is pretty new. What did the ancients do with pain before? There must have been mechanisms. And even, I guess, childbirth, we've been giving birth to babies for thousands of years, millions of years. And then how did they deal with it without pain? How did they deal with it without pain? I did a lot of childbirth hypnosis when I was young and starting out. And one of the things they taught us is that when you go into a hospital, psychologically, your mind goes into this place of sick people. And so there's a lot of stress and tension and all these machines. And we didn't have all that when we were natural humans. This is just part of life. And I wonder if we could measure and talk to someone from 1 million years ago who had birth, what their perception of pain was versus someone who's having a modern birth today.
Yeah.
And we have all these interventions that interfere with the natural birth process and actually make birth harder.
Yeah.
So with all the pain, there's
it gets to that idea that, again, that pain is not bad. It's simply saying pay attention. And so if we're willing to pay attention, we'll be okay. Most of the time we'll be fine. We'll find a way. It's when we ignore it or we cover it up with medication, then we're increasing the likelihood of us getting into trouble because we're not paying attention to what the mind body is telling us to pay attention to.
So I think the what I'd love to leave everyone with today is this idea that within your own body mind, within your own consciousness, personal consciousness, there is the answer to alleviate your pain. And you have to find that answer. There's going to be trial and error, but try these alternative techniques, guided imagery, hypnosis, yoga, biofeedback, relaxation, and be open to this idea that you will find the answer, that this is not a life sentence for you, and trust in your deep intelligent self that the answer's within you. I think if you don't approach it that way, if you have a defeatist attitude where it's never going to change, it's going to be even hard to even receive it. But try, even if it's 1%, have a little bit of faith in your own divine intelligence to find the answer. And maybe it's by accident running into someone who has a technique that works, or it's a friend of yours says, hey, you know, I tried this, try that. And you just try and just be open to things working and you finding the solution. I think that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Yes. So would you like to give us a little hint on how to work with headaches?
Well, I did talk about the moving your attention to your feet, but I'll give you another one, which might be a nice. One of the greatest things about guided imagery is that you actually can leave your body and mentally, you get like a little distance from your body. And so you can just do a deep, head to toe relaxation and just picture yourself in a beautiful place. A place that just makes you feel happy, because that's also very important for healing, is a calm, happy, beautiful place. And then imagine in that place is a healing pool, like a small little, if you're afraid of, wild things, it could be of like a regular pool, a spa pool. But if you like nature, maybe it's just like a watering hole. And the water is whatever temperature you want. It's to be either really cool or really warm. And you just sit in this and imagine that it's your healing bath. And then if you have a headache and you're sitting with your head outside of the water and the rest of the bath is heat, it will pull all that energy from your head. Imagine the cool air around your head, and you can really just experience that healing. And this is also great for chronic pain. If you have a pain in your body, just imagine being in that really deep, amazing bath. When we were in Jordan, we went into the Dead Sea, where it's like very salty and heavy and you can float in it. So if you want it to be that salty, nutrition filled healing bath, and you can create these states, and you'll find is that your mind takes its attention off the physical body, and then there's this mind body, this like etheric body, like a kind of an image of your body that you're actually working with and kind of giving yourself a little space. And it's profoundly healing to do that type of work. And it doesn't have any side effects, which is the best part.
That's right. Wonderful.
So you're going to try that tonight, Rob?
I'm going to try that tonight.
So wonderful to share all this information, and we hope you got something out of this today, or have a friend that is suffering from chronic pain. Maybe have them listen to this episode. Be open to something changing. Be open to a miracle in your life, and trust that deep within you there is this powerful intelligence that wants you to be healthy, wants you to have return back to perfect health. So hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week
Thanks
on
for watching
Soul Sessions.